This is Ranger Madison. Hello, Ranger Ruvin.
Oh, hey, Ranger Madison. A last-minute switch-up. It's nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you, too. We have a nice full crowd over here on the mainland.
Oh, it's fantastic to be able to talk with you all today. My name is Ranger Ruvin, and right now I'm coming to you live from underwater. This is a pretty special opportunity for all of us, because right now we are broadcasting from inside of a kelp forest at Inaccessible Landing Cove from the island. So everyone watching us today is in Channel Islands National Park at our visitor center, but we're separated by 12 miles of ocean. But today, because of the National Park Service and Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, including our camera operator Claire from NOAA, are helping to bring this program together so that we can be connected even though we're far apart. And so today, we're going to try and test that connection, and we can have everybody together in the audience say, "Thank you, Claire, for filming us today and bringing this broadcast to life." Are we ready?
We're ready.
All right, count us down, Madison, on 3.
2, 1.
She's giving you a wave from behind the camera. And we appreciate the connections between Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and the National Park. And we're not just connected together through this video. All of us, whether we're underwater in the kelp right now or watching this broadcast on the mainland, are indelibly connected to the kelp forests and the ocean ecosystems of Channel Islands National Park. And today, we're going to explore those connections through the Channel Islands Live program. And one thing I was wondering, since this program is completely open to the public, anyone could have walked into the visitor center, is who might have traveled the farthest to come see Channel Islands National Park in this program. So Madison, if you could have folks raise their hand if they came either from out of state or out of county, and see if we have, or maybe we only have locals, but maybe get an answer from the crowd of where they came from.
We have a hand raised right here. Where are you from?
Santa Cruz, California.
Nice.
Oh, Santa Cruz. I love that city. There's some great kelp forests at Santa Cruz as well. Awesome. Anybody else?
Ooh, we got another hand right here.
Connecticut.
Connecticut across the country. Wow, that's really exciting that you're getting to explore national parks and public lands out here. And so we're going to talk today about how everyone in this room, whether you're coming from Connecticut up the coast in Santa Cruz, or if you're underwater like me and Matt, we are all connected to the kelp. And kelp is the foundation of life in many of the marine ecosystems in Channel Islands National Park. You're seeing it right next to me. Kelp is an algae. It's not a plant, but it's a foundational species that grows in rocky reefs. It can grow to well over 100 feet long and over 2 feet per day. And it creates a habitat, a home for over 1,000 different species of marine organisms, some of which we're going to see today. But it's also connected to us beyond just the biodiversity that it fosters. It also helps all of us function in our daily lives, and it's connected to you when you go back to Connecticut. Because kelp and other photosynthetic marine algae, so algae in the ocean that are photosynthesizing, produce half of the oxygen in our Earth's atmosphere and in our oceans. And we can test that connection today too. So Madison, if you want to count us down on 3, we can all together say, thanks for the help, kelp, after taking a deep breath.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I heard you loud and clear on that one. So every breath we take, we have kelp and its friends to thank. And kelp are a lot like plants on land, even though they're algae underwater. They create certain species like giant kelp, the one I'm holding on to, create canopy-forming forests underwater, a lot like trees do on land. And you can see me holding up the blade of a kelp, which is kind of similar to the leaf of a plant. The blade will take in sunlight and help turn carbon dioxide into oxygen. Kelp is also well adapted to this marine ecosystem. They've got flexible, bendy stipes, which are kind of like the trunk of a tree, but specific to these marine environments so that they can be pushed around by the current. They also need to rise to the surface to photosynthesize. So they've got these little gas-filled bladders. The fancy term is pneumaticist, but we like to call them air pods right now. I think this one's playing Under the Sea by the Little Mermaid. I don't have Shazam on right now, so I'll have to check later. And they're connected to the ground below. As Claire pans down to the base of this sporophyte of kelp, you can see the holdfast, which is kind of like the root system of a tree. The holdfast helps the kelp affix itself to the rocky substrate below, to the bottom of the ocean, so it remains connected and doesn't float away. Scientists used to think that kelp holdfasts were different from roots and that they weren't actually taking up any nutrients. They were just holding the kelp to the bottom. But there was some cool recent research from Moss Landing Marine Labs and other institutions that showed that nitrogen and probably other nutrients were being taken up by the holdfast and moved to other parts of the kelp, which is really exciting. We're constantly learning about our oceans. And kelp is connected, not just to all of us on the mainland, by helping us breathe, by taking in carbon dioxide and helping to fight the impacts of climate change, but it's also creating habitat and structure for those thousands of marine organisms. So we're going to explore those connections today. So we're going to take a look as volunteer diver Matt swims over with one of the coolest animals that we find in the kelp forest. So what I've got in my hands here is one live purple urchin, as well as the skeleton called a test of one that's not so lucky. Urchins are echinoderms. They're part of a group of animals whose name means in Latin spiky skin, and you can see that with all of the little spines on this urchin. The urchin, as I turn it over for the camera, you can see on the bottom are all these wiggly little tubes. Those are tube feet, they're called podia. Urchins take in water and are almost little hydraulic systems that extend these podia to crawl around. Purple urchins and other urchin species like to eat kelp. Kelp provides them a home, and it also provides them with a meal. And in a healthy kelp forest, where there's lots of predators to eat the urchins will hide in little cracks and crevices in the day, and then come out, nibble on a little drift kelp or pieces of kelp that float by, and then go back under the rock. So urchins are really important, and they're native to kelp forest ecosystems, and help keep the kelp forest healthy by cleaning up bits of that drift kelp. But they're not the only species that likes to munch on kelp in the forest. We also have one that we saw recently alongside a rock that Claire is going to pan to now. That likes to munch on the kelp as well. So right now we're taking a look at another really cool animal of the kelp forest. So this may not look like it to those of us who have seen snails on land, but we're actually looking at an underwater snail right now called an abalone. Have members of our audience heard of abalone before?
We're getting a big yes here.
A big yes, yeah. Abalone are an iconic species here in California. I wonder, Madison, do we have anyone who has done any abalone diving, who used to go fish for abalone?
Does not look like it.
And that makes sense, because the abalone fisheries across much of California have been closed for several years due to the decline of kelp forest. But here in Anacapa Landing Cove, where we're in a marine reserve, the kelp is protected, and so is the ecosystem around it. So it provides a home for these abalone to thrive. Abalone also like to munch on kelp, just like the urchins. And they'll affix themselves to these rocks, where they'll hang out and wait for little pieces of kelp to drift by. I just fed this abalone, they look hungry, earlier before the broadcast. So I'm going to try and give it a little bit and see if it still wants to eat more. But they'll grab drift kelp and pull it underneath them and munch away. So just like the purple urchin, they're doing their part. Help eat the kelp that breaks off of the strands above. And you can see this abalone has latched a hold of the little piece of oarweed, or the type of kelp that I fed it, and is now munching away. We're going to say goodbye to that little abalone. Had it on the head for a job well done. The real talent of the Channel Islands Live program right there. Madison, do we have any questions from our audience now that we've taken a look at an abalone as well as a purple urchin?
We have one question right here. And the question is,
are you seeing a lot of fish?
We are seeing a lot of fish, especially now that we've pulled some of that sargassum out of the shot. Yeah, lots of different fish live in Anacapa Landing Cove, and we've been seeing a lot of them on this dive. I can't see behind me, so it's probable that at some point today, a fish with a red stripe and black on it, called a sheephead, is going to swim right through the shot. And those sheephead like to eat the purple urchin and keep them healthy. So kelp protects many species who all work together and are connected to keep the kelp forest healthy. So we'll see if we've got our next little friend that we're going to take a look at in just a second. Any other questions from the audience before we make a new kelp connection?
the question is,
Are there sea otters?
Oh, that was a good question. Are there sea otters? So if you had come to Channel Island, what is now Channel Islands National Park, hundreds of years ago, there would have been sea otters. across all 8 islands that compose Southern California's Channel Island. Unfortunately, due to human intervention and hunting of sea otters for their pelts, sea otters are gone or extirpated from all but one of the Channel Islands. So at a neighboring island far south of here, sea otters are still present at San Nicolas Island. I love the way the kelp is lit up here, both by the sunbeams and by the bright lights that were shining on it. We got time for one more question, Madison.
Oh, the question is,
Oh, I have a question. The small abalone shells that we find on the beaches out there, are they immature abalone that didn't make it, or how do they end up washed up?
So the small ones you'll find on the beach, we have a number of different species here in Channel Islands National Park. There's actually 7 species of abalone found here in California. Likely, if they were pretty small, that means they did die at about the time that that shell was that size, which is normal. A lot of marine species face their highest level of mortality when they're much smaller. We do often see abalone make it to a pretty massive size inside of the marine reserves where they're protected here. And so now we've got one more kelp connection headed our way. And this is one of my favorite organisms in the kelp forest. I know I say that about all of them, but I especially mean it with my friend that Matt just brought over here. So this little new kelp connection friend crawling across the top of my hand is called a fragile rainbow star. And this fragile rainbow star that you see here is also an echinoderm. It's related to that sea urchin that we saw earlier. Fragile rainbow stars are a kind of sea star, which are often colloquially called starfish. And sea stars, just like the urchin, have all of those little podia, which you can see on this star as it crawls along my hand. It's really making a break for it. Fragile rainbow stars are usually found a little farther south of here. But we've been seeing them more and more in Anacapa Landing Cove. And they're joined by many other species of sea stars. They like to feed on little crabs and crustaceans and other animals that are found in the kelp forest. So they're predators. They have an important role in the ecosystem as well. They're connected to the kelp. Kelp provides them with food of other animals that live here. Do you have any questions from our audience about any of the other species that we've seen today?
we have a question right here.
So was the starfish like spiky?
So that starfish that crawled right off of my hand and fell below us somewhere has little spines on it. And it is spiky, especially if you're the prey, because a fragile rainbow star, who I'm looking for but has disappeared back into the kelp forest that it calls home, has both little spines that it uses for defense, which were those bright orange parts that we were seeing, but also has little beak-like claws called pedicelaria on the top of it that it uses to catch prey, which is really weird for a sea star. Most sea stars use those little tube feet on the bottom of them to affix to prey and grab them and move them towards their mouths. But that particular species of sea star will help prey on the top of it, keep it in place, and then move it underneath them. And we've talked about today how we are connected to the kelp forest because we breathe the air that kelp creates, because kelp can help reduce the amount of coastal erosion, slow down wave actions on our coast, and keep the coastline, especially where we've built lots of properties, from eroding away as quickly by taking in carbon dioxide and helping to fight the impacts of fossil fuels and climate change. But the kelp is also connected to us. Our impacts as people have the ability to change the kelp forest around us. Because right now, like I mentioned earlier, we are in a marine reserve, a place that has been protected for decades from fishing. So animals like that fish called the sheephead or lobster can survive here and keep the kelp forest in balance. Those predators can eat purple urchins and other species that graze on kelp and keep them from becoming too numerous and munching through all of the kelp. So by keeping the predators in the ecosystem and keeping things in balance, we're able to have healthy and thriving kelp forests inside of our reserves. And so I wonder, Ranger Madison, how else are humans connected to the kelp? What can we do to help the kelp? Do we have any suggestions from our audience?
We're looking for answers right now. We have an answer right here.
Don't litter.
Don't litter. Yeah, so that's a great one. We actually have a great example of that volunteer Matt is going to bring out in just a second here. So we want to make sure that any trash we create on the mainland is disposed of properly. Because even though we are 12 miles apart and seem far away from the Channel Islands, we're still connected to the mainland, so marine debris or pieces of trash created by humans that make their way into the ocean will sometimes join us here at Anacapa Landing Cove. And I've got a great example of that right here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to take a call today. I think this phone might be out of service. But we found somebody's cell phone at Anacapa Landing Cove earlier that either made its way out from the mainland or was dropped by a visitor. And recreation can also have an impact on the islands. We've got this dive mask that we found as well. So we can help do our part to keep the kelp forest clean and free of litter by reducing the amount of trash that we make, reusing items when we can, and then disposing of our waste properly and making sure we're not accidentally putting debris out into the ocean. So that's a great way that we can all help the kelp. Anybody else have suggestions, Ranger Madison?
The answer is
Don't drop your anchor in the holdfast.
Drop your anchor in the holdfast can be helpful as well, especially in the seagrass beds around the islands too, because a lot of places that people like to anchor are in beds of underwater plants called seagrass, which look kind of like grass on land and form vast underwater meadows around the islands. And so trying to avoid trapping your anchor in the seagrass can help prevent tearing them up from the sandy substrate below them. We actually found a couple of anchors that had been accidentally left behind here in Anacapa Landing Cove earlier today, but they were heavy, so we took them up. Didn't bring them in today. Awesome. Well, I think we've gotten a great idea from your suggestions, from the audience, from the animals we've seen today, of how we are all connected to the kelp, and how our actions influence the kelp forest, and how the kelp forests impact each of us. So I want to thank everybody for joining us and being connected to me, to the National Park, and to the National Marine Sanctuary today. We really appreciate the chance to be connected with you and to talk with you.
Beautiful. Can we get a big thank you for Ranger Ruvain?
Thank you as well, Ranger Madison. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Best fishes to all of you.